Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar. My name is Oren Elias and I am the General Manager of CoderZ, and I'm super excited to welcome you all to our first robotics workshop for STEM teachers. For me, this feels like a big family reunion. As I was browsing through the names of the participants, I was glad to see many familiar names that we have interacted with over the past year. A few technicalities before we begin. This live webinar is being recorded, and we will share it with the audience soon after. The chat will remain open throughout the webinar, so feel free to use it. Our team is here waiting for your questions. To submit a question, simply type it in the question box in the lower corner of the GoToWebinar control panel. We will try to answer some of the questions during the session, and we'll also leave time for questions at the end. You can also tweet using the hashtag STEMinar during or after the webinar. I would like to point out that GoToWebinar screen sharing often requires high bandwidth and significant computer resources, which means that our simulation may appear a bit choppy at times. We hope that the content we have prepared meets your expectations and would value your feedback during and after the webinar in order to help us improve and adjust towards the session next week. One last thing before we begin. We've been overwhelmed with the responses for this workshop, with nearly 800 educators signing up. To show our appreciation and our commitment to bring robotics to everyone, we have prepared an exclusive promotion for all of you attending this workshop. We'll share the details of the promotion at the end of the session, so stay tuned. Leading this series of workshops is our very own Adi Shmorak. Adi has vast experience in teacher training and content development. He has been a First LEGO League head judge for over 10 years and is an advocate for STEM education. So without further ado, please allow me to invite our speaker. Adi, the audience is all yours.
Thank you, Oren, for the warm introduction. I am very excited and happy to see so many teachers here with us, eager to get started with robotics. I will do my best to make this a time well spent. Let's start. CoderZ is set to bring robotics to all. This webinar, first in a series of 3, is set to help STEM teachers venture into the world of robotics. While we will start with the basics, by the end of the 3 sessions, you will be able to do so much more. Since CoderZ is online, you will also be able to practice in between sessions. And as Oren mentioned, this webinar is recorded, so don't worry, be happy. In this first session, we will not only get to drive our own virtual robot, we will also try and understand what a robot is, what makes it work, and why. We will also see how it moves around and how to control it using code. I know it may sound a lot, and that is why my team is here with me for you, ready to take your questions as they arise. Let's go. Actually, the real question here is not what is a robot, but why. Any robot is built for a reason, to solve a problem. Usually, that problem is not a technical issue, but rather something that impacts our lives, and robots can make it better, like cleaning the house for us or mowing the lawn, so we can spend time doing the things we love. So, if a robot is built to serve a purpose, it would be fair to say that robots are problem solvers. That is my definition for a robot. Not sure everyone would agree, but in education, we need to look at things a bit differently and show students new perspectives. As problem solvers, robots offer a great opportunity to practice problem solving. That is why they are so popular in education. Educational robots are also problem solvers. They help STEM teachers like yourself deliver interdisciplinary STEM classes, promote tech literacy, engage students, and I can go on, but I believe you will soon see for yourselves how robots, virtual and real, can transform any class. That is why I prefer to relate to robotics as a learning environment, rather than a subject matter or a topic. Let's dig a little bit deeper. So here is a quick question for you. Is a washing machine a robot? You can write your answer in the chat box. Since the dawn of time, civilization needed clean clothes. I mean, where would we be if we all had to wear dirty, smelly clothes all day long? Washing machines do us a great service, not only saving us trip down to the river, but also freeing up our time so we can work on great inventions like the internet or that spinner fidget. Take a few more seconds to submit your answer. Is a washing machine a robot? Looking at your answers, it seems like our washing machine is not considered to be a robot, but it is still a technological system that solves a problem, and it makes our lives better. Well, there is a slippery slope, though. If the washing machine was also able to, say, pick the dirty clothes off the floor, maybe even dry it, fold it, and even put it back in the closet, then you would have probably considered it to be a robot, and not just any robot, a dream robot. I have 4 kids, so you can understand what that would mean for me. So what makes a robot a robot? Let's find out. For a washing machine to do its job, it needs energy, materials, and data, things like dirty clothes, clean water, soap, and power. These are called inputs as they go into the machine. Every technological system has inputs. The washing machine, like any other technological system, has outputs as well. Outputs are whatever the washing machine outputs, like clean clothes, but also dirty water, noise, pollution, etc. Outputs can also be energy, material, or data. Here is a fun activity for your students. Ask them to name the inputs and outputs of a desktop computer. In this case, the keyboard would be an input, and the screen an output. Speakers would be outputs as well, but the microphone an input, and so on. Robots can be described in a similar way. They have inputs and outputs, and these define what the robot is capable of doing. Let's have an even closer look. We'll start with inputs. These are usually electronic or electromechanical devices that can convert a physical quantity to voltage. The robot's controller, which is the brains of the robot, uses this voltage reading when running a program. Don't worry, we will explain this further in the next session when we talk sensors. We will see that with more sensors, there is more the robot can see around it. In this session, we will focus on the outputs. These define what the robot can do. With more outputs, there are more things a robot can do. Robot outputs, in most cases, are used for motion. Robots, unlike washing machines, are more versatile in their ability to move. Whether they are along an assembly line or cleaning the house, the ability to move is a must if you want to be a respectable member of the robotics community. Motion is almost always acquired using electrical motors. The motors convert electrical energy into kinetic energy, meaning they move, or in most cases, they spin. Here is another fun activity. Ask your students to find out how many motors they have at home. Motors are hidden in almost every household appliance. A washing machine has 2 motors, one to spin the drum and another to pump water. Shaving machines, food processors, the microwave, these all have motors as well. Can you guess how many motors I counted at my home? Any guesses? Excellent. Whoa, 150 is a lot. Okay, I counted 31 motors, and I probably missed a couple. So, using inputs and outputs, robots can sense their environment and act accordingly. This is where we come into play as the programmers. We determine what action the robot will take for different situations. This is what makes a robot stand out from other technological systems, like our washing machine. Robots are programmable to accomplish completely different tasks, making them so much more versatile. While a washing machine will always clean clothes, the same robot can be used to assemble a car or make frozen yogurt. Let's summarize what we know so far. Robots are problem solvers. They have sensors and motors to help them sense the environment and take appropriate actions. When designing a robot, we need to understand the problem so we can equip the robot with the relevant inputs and outputs. Then we can use code to tell the robot what to do. With Coder Z, writing programs is super easy. Let's see how easy it would be to instruct our virtual robot to take action.
This is Coder Z's Mission Center. It holds many learning opportunities and is constantly being updated with more missions. I recommend taking the Getting Started walkthroughs at the beginning to get the hang of things. But for now, we will start with the Navigation Part 1 mission. Meet the BrickBot. Our virtual robot, compatible with the beloved LEGO Mindstorm's EV3 Robot Educator model. Earlier, I mentioned how outputs define what the robot can do. Let's focus on the drivetrain for this model, as it allows it to move around in a special way. The BrickBot has 2 wheels, each connected directly to a motor, which means this robot has 2 motors, the left motor controlling the left wheel and the right motor controlling the right wheel. There is a ball bearing located at the back of the robot to provide it with balance. This type of drivetrain is very common in robots. It is called a tank drive, and you can find it in Segways, robot vacuum cleaners like the Roomba and Nito, and in many education robots. During the next few missions, we will construct a rulebook that applies to our BrickBot, the EV3 Robot Educator model, and many other robots. Unlike cars that have steering wheels, we have just these 2 motors, With them, we can control the robot in multiple ways. By exploring these ways together, you will know, by the end of this session, how to make such robots drive around. In this first navigation mission, we need to drive the robot forward. As you can see in the base code, we can control each motor independently. Here is the block for the left motor and another one for the right motor. The robot needs to drive forward, collect all those nuts and bolts until it reaches that target at the end of the path. These blocks make our code just like Scratch. Writing visual code is very intuitive. All you need to do is snap blocks together. Once your code is ready, you can run it in simulation or download it to the real robot. One of the great things about learning with robots is that robot allows us to raise an hypothesis and put it to the test. This is something students can also do by their own at home, like in flipped classrooms. So here is another question. I will enter a speed value of 100 in the left motor block. "100" would mean top speed. Write down in the chat box what you think will happen when I run this code, powering just the left motor. Will the robot drive forward? Will it turn? If so, in what direction? To the right? To the left? I like asking students to use their imagination before making an assumption. What would happen if we step forward using only our left leg? Write down your answers now in the chat box. Don't rush, you have a moment. An assumption is worth nothing without the means of putting it into the test. Coder-Z enables us to immediately put our assumptions to the test. By running the code in simulation, I'll click Run. By running the code in simulation, as you can see, the robot is turning to the right. The left motor is pushing the robot forward. But the right wheel is holding it in its place, resulting in a pivot turn around the right wheel. To see it clearly, let's activate the trail option. It will instruct the robot to leave a trail below its center of gravity. We can now clearly see how the right wheel is the center of this circle. So, we analyzed a particular behavior based on which we can formalize a general rule, saying driving just one motor will turn the robot towards and around the other motor. To validate this rule, let's test it out against another particular case. Let's see if this rule applies to the right wheel as well. Our new hypothesis would be that if we turn only the right motor, the robot will turn to the left and around the left motor. Let's run the new code. Great. We now know how to pivot turn the robot, powering just one motor. Now, it is time for another hypothesis. What if we drive both motors together? I'll set both motors to 100. What do you think will happen now? Write down your answers in the chat box, and we will try in a second. You can think about walking with both legs, advancing at the same pace. Where would we go? Let's run the code. Hooray! Getting it right is always great, but in robotics, it is also great when you make a mistake. Great discoveries happen when we make mistakes. I encourage you and your students to accept mistakes as learning opportunities. Coder Z missions are great for trial and error. You can always try again, and when successful, click Next to take another mission. Let's move on to the next mission. Drive the robot backwards. Use the correct speed setting so the robot backtracks and collects all points. May the code be with you. We just saw that driving the robot forward requires both motors to turn at the same speed and direction. That is another one for the rulebook. Driving backwards, which is what we need to do now, is just as easy. Direction can be set using these drop-down menus. Let's try and run it. I forgot to add power, so the robot stops. I'll add 100 for the left motor and 100 for the right motor and run it again. Hooray! Before we move on to the next mission, let's try again and explore a little bit further. Let's see what happens if we use negative power. Let's write our code and put it to the test. I will switch back the direction to forward and this time use -100 for both motors as the set speed. Let's run our code now. Awesome! Negative power changes direction as well. Speed is actually a vector, as it has both direction and magnitude. Before we move on, let's have a look at the rulebook we started. This rulebook we are building together is based on observation we made through trial and error. We analyzed information, applied conclusions, and have moved from the particular to the general and then back to another particular case. Constructing knowledge that way is at the foundation of Coder Z curriculum. Let's use an example taken from our Coding Robots Middle School course. Here is one of our Coding Robots earlier lessons. While you are not familiar with all blocks and commands and may not see yourself as programmers yet, with the Blockly Visual Code Editor and the simulation as an interpreter, reading code is a great practical way to develop computational thinking skills. This lesson is about reading code. Students are asked to figure a buggy program. Using the code comments and the simulation, students need to figure out what commands are missing so the robot returns to its starting position. From the comments, we can see that all this program is doing is to drive the robot forward for a while, then turn the robot to the right, then forward, then turn to the right, as its code repeats itself. To fix this code and bring the robot back to its starting position, let's see what we need to do. Let's use the simulation as the interpreter of the code. I'll run my code and try to find out what is missing. As we can see, we are only missing two actions: turn to the right and then move forward. We already have these blocks available for us, so all we need to do is just duplicate those commands. I'll duplicate this block, which takes the robot forward, as it says so in the comments. Oops, I made a mistake. First I need to turn, and then I'll duplicate this block, which takes the robot forward, bringing it back to its starting position. These comments help me to understand what the code is about, and running a simulation helps me see exactly what it means. If you are already familiar with programming, you probably thought, why not use loops? Once students are introduced to new concepts, such as loops, they revisit previous missions in which they can apply new knowledge. This is very helpful as they already understand the problem and can focus on applying a new and different solution. I hope by now you feel just a little bit more comfortable reading visual blockly code. Write down OK in the chat box if you indeed feel more comfortable, or ask a question and my colleagues will reply promptly. Excellent. As you can see, we are slowly constructing more knowledge and acquiring more skills. But do not be discouraged if it feels like a lot to take in. With Coder-Z, you will be able to practice and experiment whenever you like. And I guarantee you will feel very comfortable in no time. In fact, I can guarantee that while you may make some mistakes along the way, no one will get hurt, and Coder-Z will not blow up in your face. In the next mission, we will learn to use sensors. In the next session, we will learn to use sensors so the robot will sense its environment and be more accurate and reliable. Excuse me. Before that, I want to show you something if you feel stuck or want to try from the beginning. From the mission menu, you can easily navigate to previous or the next mission, but can also restart the current mission. If you feel lost, this is a good place to restart. Remember though, this will delete your own code and bring back our base code if available. I will move on to the next mission, Navigation Part 3. While similar to the first mission, Navigation Part 3 requires us to turn the robot before driving forward. Someone, it wasn't me, turned the robot away, and we need to fix it. Luckily, we already discovered how to do this and turn our robot through trial and error during the first mission. We know powering just one motor will make the robot turn to the direction of the still motor. In this specific case, turning the robot to the left will point it at the direction of our objective. So, to turn left, we just need to power the right motor. If we check the tips, which are located in all missions, we can get some help to guide our way. The idea behind the tips is to help every student succeed. The base code, which is available for us here, helps students feel comfortable with code and promote their confidence. This is important throughout the learning process, and our gamified content provides immediate and positive feedback to make students feel confident and capable. All that remains for us is to find out through trial and error the right timing for turning the robot 90 degrees so it faces the objective. As you can see, the first block has another element added to it which sets the duration of that movement. Let's try it out. We'll first power the right motor to make a left turn. And let's say 1 second. This is in milliseconds, so I'm entering 1000. Once the robot completes this movement, powering the right motor, it will turn left. Then we need the robot to go forward. We already know how to do that. Let's use 100 as the set speed for both motors. As you can see, the turn did not cover 90 degrees, so we need to provide it a little bit more time. Tweaking the code like this is something that is always relevant. It's always used even with real robots. In the next session, we will learn to use sensors, so the robot will sense its environment and be more accurate and reliable.